Who cares about a random woman with Tourette's? Should I address the stats and facts about it? What if I don't know every Tourette's fact? What if I get made fun of? What would happen if I put myself all out there and life just continues as normal? If I'm being painfully honest, I didn't want to speak about any of this at all. See, I knew I had the unique challenge of having a passion to educate others on a neurological disorder that is over-stigmatized, highly misunderstood, and almost too easy to taunt. I was going to talk about the disorder, but by no means was I wanting to be the disorder. Centering the very thing that I had spent the majority of my life running from, denying, and hating was not appealing. How could I talk about this unstoppable force that torments me for its own amusement? The alternative, though, is so much worse. The alternative means I'm not even putting up a fight. Succumbing to this destructive force that is annoying in the best of times and downright painful at its worst would mean forfeiting my voice and authenticity. It would mean making myself smaller and weaker. So I choose to fight. Fight to not stick out, fight to lessen the weight of this immense burden, fight to ignore what these people have to deal with every day. Then I thought about that again. These people. My own internal thoughts led me to alienate others who share the same condition as me because of my own self-loathing and struggle to even accept having Tourette syndrome. How dare I attempt to be any form of an advocate without even admitting I'm proud of the person I am, disability and everything. I had stigmatized myself as being someone who doesn't represent what someone living with Tourette's looks like. I suddenly realized I had a lot of work to do within myself first if I had a fighting chance at helping others. I saw the importance of calling out my own bias, my own hatred, my own fears. To be honest, I'm not at the place I want to be at yet with self-love, and I've come to realize that this is a moving target, and I can accept that. I know I'm ready to start the journey, and I'm nervously excited you were here to witness it. Starting when I was around 8, I noticed that my body made unique movements throughout the day to feel some sense of balance. It started as rapid eye blinking and full-on eye rolling, or stretching my neck out multiple times a day, leading my teachers and classmates asking if I was okay. I didn't know what Tourette syndrome was back then. I always responded back that I was having a chill or nervous tic, but it was obvious I was the only child I knew who seemed to have the urge to abruptly move or make unwanted noises. One of the worst memories was having a ticking fit of full body shakes that was stuck in a loop for an entire night before a big day at school, keeping me up for the entire night. For those of you unfamiliar with what a ticking fit feels like, imagine your entire body violently and uncontrollably convulsing, then repeat that for 8 hours. Needless to say, this wouldn't be the last time I was red-eyed and exhausted going to school. It was then I realized I had no control over this foreign and destructive force that would randomly take control of me. My mom, who I was in bed with at the time, was so desperately trying to help me. I felt absolutely hopeless trying to explain a feeling that felt impossible to describe in that moment. I cried to her that I just wanted to be normal and that there must be a doctor who could fix me. Today, normal is now a word I seldom use due to the damaging effect that it can take on an individual. But that night, it was all that I imagined would make me feel better. It was all that I wanted. Later, I was told by the neurologist at the time that I would grow out of it, that he didn't quite understand me, but it wouldn't last much longer. I remember after that appointment being able to breathe a little easier. It was just a phase, a quirk. It wasn't going to consume me for much longer. And technically, he should have been right, as most children do grow out of their Tourette's. Normally, by the age of 25, you say goodbye to your Tourette's journey, but for others like myself, it clutched tightly to me and only got worse. What I find interesting about Tourette syndrome is it waxes and wanes, so the frequency of my tics changes sometimes by the hour, the day, the week, the month. When one of my tics vanishes, it is usually quickly replaced with another one, and often I have multiple tics going on at one time. Some people say that the worst part about Tourette's is not actually the issue of having tics, but it's people's reactions, and I can understand that. Some of the nicer people witness my tics and gently squeeze my hand and tell me to stop. Then there are those that hear or see my tics and choose to mock me, which is astonishingly cruel and not actually helpful in any way. In those instances, It always tempts me to approach them and the people silently watching and ask them to keep going. That's right. I would challenge them to continue mimicking me for minutes. How about try hours, days, or months? Report back to me how funny you think it is. Give them some real encouragement. I would urge them to do it alone, on a Zoom call, in public, on a first date, or while making love. I would have them share a glass of wine with friends, and then have them tick and bite down so hard while sipping that shards of glass fill their mouth, like I did just a year ago. Really set the scene for them so they don't miss out on a chance to really experience life through my lens. The fact is, they would wear themselves out from the extra energy that they require in a day. They would endure moments of human ignorance and cruelty they would be appalled at. Their heads would hurt during taking fits, and I promise they wouldn't be laughing anymore. And in some cases, they would and could severely injure themselves. It is exhausting to have Tourette's. The physical toll it takes on my body and the emotional energy it takes to exist is hard. That's not even the worst part. The worst part about having Tourette's is just how lonely it feels. The lack of understanding and proper awareness of Tourette syndrome with those closest to me really tears at my heart, let alone society's lack of knowledge and associated stigmas that surround it. Sometimes a very lonely and sad existence. Don't worry, this story isn't meant to be tragic. Things turn around soon, but not yet, so hang on a bit longer. When I accepted my diagnosis later in life, it was crushing. Tourette syndrome was almost completely foreign to me in the sense that I knew very little about it, but obviously in the same sense, I knew everything about it. It felt like I had nowhere to seek comfort and support. No one would ever understand this part of me, so I had only myself to rely on to navigate through my life that officially would always be a struggle. No matter how I looked at it, I was in this fight for the long term, and I was in it alone. It wasn't until years later that I would meet someone who would truly touch my life. I call this moment the Vinnie effect, and it wasn't until then did I truly understand my potential power and purpose. More on that later. Before the Vinnie effect, I decided that there was no point to talk about it since my case would be considered minor and wasn't severe enough to be able to speak on. People would be expecting and craving to hear the loud, uncontrollable swearing and gestures they often see misrepresented in the media. Those types of tics are known as coprolalia. Coprolalia. See, no matter what happens, you have hopefully learned something about Tourette's. This form of tic only shows up in 10% of cases, and the majority will present differently. The problem with the stereotype of Tourette syndrome in the media is that it is often exaggerated, and many of the characters are displayed in the worst of circumstances. There is a tragically large amount of incorrect information about Tourette syndrome and misleading portrayals included in the media, which factors into why people living with Tourette's are subject to so much skepticism and self-doubt about their own condition. But that makes sense. When nearly 60% of people experience their first exposure that they know of to Tourette's on the media, they are being exposed to the characters with the worst of circumstances being played by neurotypical actors. There's even a card game being made called Tourette's to encourage blurting of inappropriate and embarrassing responses. I mean, it might lighten the load if we got some royalties or kickbacks from the game, but my hope is the game will do horrible, and I kindly ask that you do not support this product. I later learned that there are many media influencers that will fake the condition in order to receive laughs and likes. I discovered this myself one day as I was searching YouTube to see if I could find someone who reminded me of myself in some way. The representation thing. Instead, I was struck with pain by the people who would fake a neurological disorder for social media points. What was even more damaging was the number of cruel comments left on various videos of people who really did have Tourette's. You're faking it. You're doing it for the intention. Everybody knows Tourette's isn't real. Can't you just stop? Why aren't you swearing or doing something funny? Have you tried finding a religion? Maybe a demon has possessed your body. Currently, there is no cure for Tourette syndrome. However, acceptance and awareness of this disorder can be an immense benefit to those who live with it. 70% of people with Tourette syndrome said that they had been accused of ticking, either on purpose or to gain attention. The stigma of the disorder was particularly destructive for me, as I did not fit that stereotype, which led me to feel like I had actually concocted my own disorder. I noticed as a teenager that socializing became challenging. As friends expressed their desires for flatter stomachs, dating, and good grades, while I secretly wished for the ability to control my own body. Eventually, I discovered that my twitches could be suppressed on occasion with an incredible amount of mental focus and will to assimilate back into a world where I would be accepted. If I did that, I could appear to hold a conversation and keep still. One of the drawbacks? Being forced to smile and nod when in actuality, I hadn't followed the conversation due to using all of my energy to stay still and quiet. This got me through high school for the most part. I was able to get through my classes, only twitch in the bathroom when I was by myself. If I failed to fully mask who I was, I could always pretend I was having a cold, having a weird cough, or having a stress-induced tic. It was exhausting, but I did it. Later in life, I went on a trip to Italy in which I prepared myself for canals and gelato, but I ended up gaining something completely unexpected. This is where I met Vinnie, a person living and apparently thriving with Tourette's. I watched him unapologetically not hold any part of who he was back. I watched him ride a bike through the streets of Lucca, kicking his legs out spontaneously. I watched him speak to an entire group with confidence, making popping noises, flailing his arms in every direction, and moving his body exactly the way that was natural to him. In complete awe and infatuation of that moment consumed me, and it was Vinnie who saw me for the first time. He was quickly able to notice, even through my mastery of disguise, that I had Tourette's and that it should be celebrated, not covered up. Because the thing about my Tourette's is even if you are actively working on suppressing your tics, you just can't every moment of every day. Vinnie encouraged everybody he came across to ask him as many questions as they can. Be curious and spread that knowledge. He referred to Tourette's as something beautiful and this unstoppable force that was the very thing that would make me stronger. He encouraged me to hold my head up and never compromise who I was. As simple as this moment sounds, being able to talk about it with someone that understood me ignited the spark, the seed, that informing more people, giving them the tools to be better equipped, might just change someone's life. The Vinnie effect. This is where you come in. How can you be that Vinnie for someone in your life or someone you might meet in the future? When I started this, scared to accept who I was, Tourette's and all, I realized that I didn't see anyone like me doing this kind of work. I was waiting for someone to show me it was okay to make a difference when you were different. The truth is, and I am proud to accept this now, I wasn't waiting for someone. I was waiting for me.